Hello friends, I have a quick Mara guide here for you today. I know it's like day 2, maybe 3, depending on when I actually get to post this, of the Fellowship Open Beta. And there have been a lot of questions about how to play Mara, what builds are best for her, and what the stat priorities are. So yeah, we're gonna be going over a few different builds. I will leave different chapters per build in the timeline below, so you can, jump between them freely as you would like. In these videos, I'll go over the talent points, and these talent point builds are going to be with more of an early game focus, because I think that's where a lot of players are gonna kind of really be trying out the hero for the first time. So I'll focus with 7 talent points available, and we'll get a couple of builds going there. There are 3 core builds that Mara focuses on, so yeah, that's where we'll be starting. All right, so Mara's talents, they're pretty self-explanatory, but each build is defined by what I would call the capstone talent in row 5. So we have 3 builds here. One is From the Shadows, Hemotoxin, and Malevolence. Just to quickly summarize what each of these builds really focus on, the From the Shadows build is extremely good in AoE situations, but it struggles a lot in single target. The Hemotoxin build is very bursty, and unfortunately it's a little reliant on RNG, so you have opportunities to really high roll this build, and sometimes you might have a bit of a dry spell, which can cause some issues. However, Hemotoxin is relatively simple to play. It does really good AoE damage, does really good single target damage, and I think a lot of people are going to recommend you play Hemotoxin because it's just pretty simple to play, and you're always gonna do well with it in any form of content. The Malevolence build is what a lot of people refer to as the finisher build. This is where you're going to be using a lot of your Queen's Fangs and Arachnid Assault to buff the other corresponding abilities damage. So this gives you really good priority damage in AoE, and really good AoE damage in general. It's pretty well rounded. However, it requires a lot more nuance, and you have to pay attention to your buff stacks that you have going on with Malevolence. So essentially, Malevolence is the hardest to play, but it could technically perform the best if you play it well, and it's pretty consistent. Like, there's not any RNG reliance like you would have with something like Hemotoxin. So Malevolence is good, but just hard to play. So keep that in mind. All right, so starting off, first build, we're gonna do a bleed build. So as you get your 7 talent points, you're gonna want to invest in Blood Rush, Venomous Delight, Gushing Blood, and From the Shadows. So the way that this build really operates is Venomous Delights functions as your energy regeneration, and then you have Blood Rush, which is going to increase your tick rate of Hemorrhaging Strike. This build obviously revolves around Hemorrhaging Strike to do the majority of your damage. And then the way From the Shadows works is each time your Hemorrhaging Strikes deals damage, it has a chance to summon a shadowy clone that just hits the enemy with a 6 combo point Queen's Fang. So if you get a lot of these bleeds out, it does a lot of damage because you have all these clones coming out and constantly attacking your enemies. And then finally with Gushing Blood, it makes your Maiden of Death, which is your 1-minute cooldown. It causes Hemorrhaging Strike during Maiden to deal AoE damage, so you can quickly apply your Hemorrhaging Strikes. You only really need to apply it once, maybe twice if there are enough enemies in a massive pull, but really it saves you a lot of global cooldowns so that you can spend it on your normal AoE rotation. As I did mention, the From the Shadows build does struggle in single target damage. This is mainly due to Gushing Blood being useless in single target, so you essentially have a bit of a dead talent in that scenario. But also From the Shadows, it could use like if you're not really getting a ton of procs based off of this 24% chance to summon a shadowy clone, then just the build really falls behind. So it's also a little bit RNG reliant, especially in single target. As for stat priorities, when you're playing the bleed build, you can basically go for anything but Spirit. Haste is really good because it's going to increase the rate at which your bleeds tick, which increasing the bleed rate is going to mean more clones from the shadows. So it's going to mean more damage overall. Expertise is pretty good because it's just a flat damage increase, and it's going to apply to your dots. It's going to apply to your shadowy clones. So expertise is pretty good. And then finally, in a similar vein, critical strike is good because it's just increasing your damage output that way. Next up, we're going to be looking at the hemotoxin build, and this is a poison based build. So we're going to be using some of the corrosive spill to help our AoE. We're going to go with the venomous delight to help our energy regen. Blood rush, because blood rush actually gives hemotoxin a pretty substantial damage increase. So the way hemotoxin works is when you're backstabbing, widows, biting, or auto attacking a target, you have a small chance, only a 6% chance to apply a stack of hemotoxin. This stack will do a small amount of damage, but that's not what we're really worried about. When that stack is applied to an enemy, you can then use a hemorrhaging strike on the enemy with hemotoxin, and it'll blow up and deal a bunch of damage based on the amount of damage that hemorrhaging strike would have done. And blood rush increases the amount of ticks that hemorrhaging strike does per cast because it increases the tick rate, but it doesn't reduce the overall duration of hemorrhaging strike. So if you think about it this way, blood rush is basically just a 20% damage increase for hemorrhaging strike, and then by extension it's a 20% damage increase for hemotoxin. The stat priority for this build is similar to that of the bleed build. You want to get haste, you want to get expertise, and you want to get critical strike, all for the same reasons. Haste is going to increase the amount of times you're auto attacking, which means higher chances of applying hemotoxin. It also just increases the amount of ticks that your hemorrhaging strike would have, which again increases the hemotoxin damage. So haste is pretty good. Expertise, just again your flat damage increase, same with critical strike. And then finally, the Malevolence build. This is a little difficult to get with 7 combo points, so I would kind of recommend holding off on playing Malevolence until you have at least 8. But you basically play this like a finisher build like this, and if you get 8 points, you can either invest that 8th point into Venomous Delight, or you can put it into Puncture. I think I would like Venomous Delight just because it gives a little bit more energy sustain. However, Puncture just is a very feels good talent. For 1 point, it's also a single target damage increase, so it feels pretty good. But yeah, this is the overall setup that you're gonna want to do for Malevolence. Malevolence is a little unintuitive with how it plays. This is because you'll have to use your single target finisher, Queen's Fang, in AoE, and you'll also need to be using Arachnid Assault, your AoE finisher, in single target. So what I mean by this is when you start a pull, you'll basically want to use Arachnid Assault twice in single target, and then you'll be able to buff up your next 2 Queen's Fangs, and then with Assassin's Guile, you can stealth, and then you can buff up your damage by 40% for your Queen's Fang, so you're already getting like 140% damage increase there. So that's going to give you some massive damage, and you can do 2 finishers per Assassin's Guile window, so that's why you want to build up 2 Arachnid Assaults to give you the Malevolence Queen's Fang. So it's already just very complicated. Deadly Scheme increases your critical strike chance by 100% on your next Queen's Fang or Arachnid Assault as you recover energy, and unfortunately there's not really a reliable way to track this, so it becomes a little bit tricky, and you really want to be using these Deadly Scheme procs on the appropriate finisher for the content that you're doing. So if you're doing AoE, you want to make sure that you're applying Deadly Scheme to your Arachnid Assault, and then if you're in single target, you want to make sure that your Deadly Scheme proc is being used for Queen's Fang. But unfortunately, because there's not really a good way to track this, sometimes it might mean that as you're building stacks for your next single target burst, for example, you might accidentally use this proc on the wrong finisher, and then it just feels kind of bad. For stat priorities, I'm actually not entirely sure, because in the past, Deadly Schemes was not the strongest talent to take. It required you to have more energy before it triggered, which resulted in it having a lower uptime. However, now because it triggers basically 33% more often, you can have a lot higher critical strikes involved with your rotation, which I think reduces the value of critical strikes slightly. So I'm almost inclined to think that the top stats, if you're playing the finisher build or the Malevolence build, is going to be expertise, because it's just a flat damage increase and it's going to buff your finishers, and spirit, I think, are possibly the top two stats that you want to get. The reason why spirit would be good is because you have a chance of refunding your combo points that get used, and that would make your rotation a lot smoother as you're kind of transitioning between this dance of Arachnid Assault and Queen's Fang to build up Malevolence. But that's going to wrap up this Mara guide. Once again, this is an open beta, so this is definitely susceptible to changes, and I would be surprised if we didn't see changes. So make sure you like and subscribe for more Mara content when the game does go live. I think I will be maining her. I'm between her and Artios. But yeah, I really hope that this video helped you guys out, and let me know what build you're most interested in playing, and we can have a little bit more of a conversation around that. I will have some more endgame builds ready to go once I get to that point. Again, this is only like day 2 of the beta being active, so I haven't really had the chance to get that far, but hopefully in the near future I can have a little bit more in-depth stuff. So make sure you guys like and subscribe to stay alert on when that comes out, and just in general for more Fellowship content in the near future. But I hope you all have a great weekend, have a wonderful night, and I hope to see you in the next video.